Hello everyone, this is Miss Kimmy again from the Sparta Free Library, and welcome to our part 2 of our how-tos for our Crochet Critters projects. So today I will be showing you how to make our cute little owl guy using, again, some pretty simple stitches. They will mostly be the same stitches that we learned in part 1. The only difference will be how we close him up at the top. But we'll get to that part as we go along. If you didn't remember or weren't able to see the first episode, these types of crochet critters are called amigurumi. It's pretty much any cute little thing you can make with crochet that has kind of the look of a little doll, little plaything, and those are amigurumi. And you can make lots of different things using these skill sets, which are some pretty simple crochet stitches that you just use to make these guys here, mostly working in the round. You can see we use a lot of circles there. And you can make cute things like hearts and ghosts or cupcakes and even like a little triceratops. And you can also make bigger projects like this entire potted succulent, which we made using some pretty simple crochet stitches, just like what we're going to go over today. So first, let's go through everything that should be in your kit for this part. So you should have, of course, your yarn, our nice beautiful blue yarn. You should also have in your kit the crochet hook, and it should be a 5mm crochet hook, which, if you look on your yarn, since we are crocheting, it tells us which size to use. We use a US H/8, which is also a 5mm crochet hook. So we have our 5mm crochet hook. Also, we need our nice bag of stuffing, which we used some of for our first project, but we should still have plenty left over for our project today. We'll also have our tapestry needle, which we will use towards the end of our project. Also, your remaining glue dots. We used one of them to attach the smiley face on our little guy last time. So you should have at least 3 left. If you only have 2 left, that's fine. That will work just great for this project. Also in your kit is your little bag of felt goodies. So again, we used our little red half circle for our smiley face last time. So we should have left an orange felt triangle and 2 felt circles, which we will use for the eyes and nose on our little owl guy today. We will also have remaining 1 set of plastic eye pieces. We had 2 originally, but we used the first one for our smiley face. You'll also have 1, 2, 3 stitch markers, and just like last time, we will definitely be using 2 of them. You may need to use the 3rd, but it's good to have an extra just in case. And also not included in your kits, you'll want a pair of scissors, so that as we cut thread, you'll definitely need some scissors, and those weren't included in your kit, so just be sure you have a pair nearby. So let's get started making our little owl guy. So you should have that same working yarn that you had last time, because we're using that same bunch of yarn that was in your kit. You might have been pulling from the center or pulling from the end that was on the outside here. So whichever end your working yarn is coming out of, you'll want to grab that so we can get started. And then just like last time, my hook does look a little different, but it is a 5mm hook, and I just have this squishy part on here because I've been doing a lot of crochet lately, so it's nice to have that for comfort. So just like our first one, we are going to start with a magic circle, but we actually do want to do one step beforehand because it'll make things easier as we go. So if you could grab your felt pieces, open up your little baggie. You'll also need a pair of scissors for this, so if you haven't grabbed them yet, be sure to grab a pair of scissors. So we've got our 2 circles, which are what we're going to do a little bit of work on quick before we get started. So you can put your orange nose to the side. Just be sure you know where it is because he's tiny and easy to lose. So before we get started, we want to insert our eye pieces. So be sure to grab your bag of black plastic eyes as well. And how we're going to do that is, as you can see on our little owl, he's got his eyes not quite center, but just a little bit off center. So we need to cut little slits in our felt so that we can get those eyes in there. So if we can see if we do it in half, if we wanted it in the middle, we would cut right there, but we want it just down. So we're going to kind of fold it a little bit, probably about, so 2/3 come down and 1/3 are still folded. And then we're going to keep that fold because we're going to cut a little slit right there where that fold is. Just want a tiny little snip. Right. You can see we've got that little hole. Same thing on the other one. Little snip. There's our hole. Just want to grab our pieces, and we just want the black eye pieces for now. We won't use the washers until we attach them to our work. So if you want to put the washers back in the bag, you certainly can. Otherwise, to the side should work as well. Just like that orange triangle, they're real small, so kind of keep an eye on them. So we're going to find where there's our little hole. And you just put our eye pieces in there so that will be ready when we get to the point where we're attaching the eyes to our work. And I've just found as I've been doing these and practicing that it's much easier to get this step out of the way early. So we've got our eyes ready, and now we can get our yarn out and start going here. So, as I said before, just like with our smiley face, we're going to start with our magic circle. And remember, we just need a bit of string here. We're going to take our fingers, put it in 3, and we're going to lay that on top of there with a little bit of a tail end. Grasp that with your thumb to keep it in place, and then you're going to wrap it around and wrap it back so that you form an X. And then you're going to grab that with your pinky. I might zhuzh that a little bit. Here we go, and grab with our pinky. So we've got our X on this side, and then when you flip over, you should see those 2 straight lines of string. you're going to take your hook, put it under that first strand, and then you're going to grab that second one. You're going to pull it under that first strand, and then we're going to twist it so that it makes a little X on your work. And then we're going to go back, grab that same strand again. So get your hook under so that we've kind of got two loops on there, and we're going to pull this strand through our first loop. So just go. Ooh, there we go. So we've got that through there, and then we're just going to remove our fingers. And there we have our magic circle. So you might want to pull your working yarn a little bit just to get that tension on the hook so that it's a nice tight circle. And now what we're going to do with our magic circle, when we're looking at our pattern, we can see that we are in round 1. So we are going to make 6 stitches using our magic circle. And the important thing with a magic circle is to keep these 2 stitches, so the circle and then the tail end stitch, you want to work around them. So how we're going to start. And it might be good to grasp your knot here. I know I like to do that for some extra security. So we're going to insert our hook into the circle and then grab that working yarn, pull it back through the circle. And I also like to grab it here just because it's good to keep that tension. We're going to then grab this strand again and pull through both loops. And that's our first stitch. So we're going to want to do that 5 more times so that we've got our base of 6 stitches. So here we go. In the circle, grab the strand, back through the circle, grab the strand again, and through both loops. Oop. There we go. That's our second stitch. Through the circle, grab the strand, back through the circle, pull through, there's our third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Right. Now it's a little bit easier to put a stitch marker here instead of worrying about your hook falling out. So I'd give that a little bit more loop. Pull your hook out, grab a stitch marker, and just insert that in your working loop. Then we want to be sure to count our stitches, because at the end of each row, when you're doing any crochet project, you should count your stitches to make sure you have the right amount. And each stitch is this V here. So this counts as 1 stitch. And as we're doing crochet, that's where you stitch as well. You insert underneath those 2 loops that form the V. So we have, you can see here, stitch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we want to close up our magic circle because we want to start working in those rounds. And to do that, we just need to grab that tail end strand, kind of keep your work clamped in your fingers here, and then gently pull that so that the circle gets smaller. You can see it's starting to become a circle now. Just kind of scoot it around till you get a circle and pull that tail end nice and tight, but don't yank it too tight because you don't want to rip through it. At the end, you should have a nice little stitch circle that will still have those 6 stitches. So we'll count that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that was round 1, our 6 stitches in the magic circle. Now we're going to move on to round 2, which is our next type of stitch, which is called an increase. So how we do an increase is it is just 2 stitches inside 1 stitch. So 2 single crochets that go in 1 stitch, and that's an increase stitch. So let's get our crochet hook back here. Take our stitch marker out, put our hook back in, and you just want to kind of leave that tail dangle under. Grab your working yarn, there we go. And we're going to start those stitches right at that first one. So the first stitch there. And where we insert our hook is the same place we counted. So right under that V of those 2 loops, right in there. And doing these ones on the first row can get kind of tight, so you might need to kind of wiggle it in there a little bit. There we go. So on our hook we've got that original loop and then that V there. So we're going to then yarn over, grab a strand, pull through that V. So now we've got 2 loops on our hook, the original loop and then this new one. Yarn over and pull through both loops. And that is 1 crochet stitch. And then, since we just started a new round, we want to mark it. So grab our stitch marker and we're going to insert it right under that first stitch. Because as you're working in the round, it's very helpful to use stitch markers because then you know when your round has ended and you move on to the next one. So we were still inside our original increase, so we need to add that second single crochet inside that first stitch, and you can see that you've got a little hole there, and that's how you know that that was your stitch. So we're going back in that same hole we did the first time, under the V, back through. So we've got 2 stitches, yarn over and pull through. And that's our first increase. So that was the increase there. We're going to move on to our next stitch and do 2 single crochets there. Yarn over and pull through, pull through again, stitch 1, insert, yarn over, pull through, stitch 2. So that's our second increase. On to our third. Oop. Needs a little wiggling. Insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through again for stitch 1, stitch 2 in that same stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through. Next increase, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through again. It's our first stitch, yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through again. Need another increase, so our next stitch, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through again. Same stitch, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through again. And then our last increase, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through. Right. You can see we've got a little bit of an open circle there. So you just grab that tail end and pull it a little bit, and that seals it right up. So that was round 2. Now we want to count our stitches because we should have 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oop. There we go. 11 and 12, which is that one on your stitch marker. Now we're moving on to round 3, where we are going to do 1 single crochet and then 1 increase, and we'll repeat that 6 times around so that when we're done we have 18 stitches total. So grab our working yarn again, remove the stitch marker, insert in that first stitch to make a single crochet. Then we want to add that stitch marker because that was our first stitch in the new round. Right. And our first stitch was a single crochet, and now we're going to do an increase in that next stitch. second stitch for the increase. Now we want a single crochet, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Now an increase. First stitch, back in that same loop. Second stitch, a single crochet, then an increase, first stitch, second stitch in that same hole, single crochet, increase, first stitch, second stitch in that same hole, single crochet, and an increase, first stitch, second stitch in the same hole, a single crochet, and then our last increase, because you can see we've gotten back to the stitch marker. First stitch and second stitch. All right, so you can see that our circle is getting a little bit bigger there. So we've gotten a little bit bigger, and that was completed round 3. So we've got to count our stitches before we move on. So you can pull that out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oops, start over there, lost it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and then 18 is on the stitch marker. So now we're going to start on round 4, which will be 2 single crochets and then an increase. So our last round we had 1 single crochet and an increase. Now we'll have 2 single crochets and then an increase, and that will make our circle even larger. So let's get our first stitch, single crochet, and our stitch marker, insert that in the stitch we just made. That was our first single crochet. Now we need another single crochet. So next single crochet, through. And then we need our first increase. So we'll go to our next stitch, insert hook, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through for the first stitch, and then in that same circle, insert, yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through. Now we need our 2 single crochets in our next 2 stitches. 1 single crochet, and another single crochet, and an increase, first stitch, second stitch, and then 2 single crochets, one, two, an increase, first stitch, and then back in that same hole, second stitch, 2 single crochets, one, two, an increase, first stitch, and back in that same hole, second stitch, then 2 single crochets, one, two, an increase, first stitch, back in that same hole, second stitch, two single crochets, and our last increase. First stitch, back in that same hole, second stitch. You can see our circles getting a little bigger there. And then we want to count, because at the end of that row, which was row 4, we should have 24 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 on the stitch marker. All right, so for round 5, we are going to now do 3 single crochets and then an increase. So before we did 2 single crochets and an increase, now we are upping that to 3 single crochets and then an increase. So we want our first stitch. Insert our stitch marker in the stitch we just made, because that's the first one in our round. We need 2 more single crochets. Three single crochets. Now an increase. First stitch, second stitch in that same hole. And 3 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, an increase, first stitch, back in the same hole, second stitch, 3 single crochets, and 3, an increase, first stitch, next stitch in that same hole, whoops, yep, just wanted to double check there. Now 3 single crochets. Two, and 3. An increase, back in that same hole, three single crochets, one, two, three, an increase, first, and back in that same hole, second, 3 single crochets. Two, and 3, and then that last increase. First stitch, back in the same hole. All right, so that was round 5. And at the end of that, we should have 30 stitches. And of course, our circle is much bigger now. And it also should be a little domed, because here we are making the bottom part of our little owl guy. So let's count our stitches. Make sure we have 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30 on the stitch marker. All right, so again, that was round 5. For round 6, we are just going to single crochet in all the stitches around. So at the end of round 6, we'll still only have 30 stitches because we're not doing any increases, we're just doing single crochets all the way around. Get our stitch marker out. First stitch, place our stitch marker back in, and then we're just going to go all the way around with single crochet. So that was our first stitch. On to our next one. And just keep going around until we meet that stitch marker again. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 5, 29, and last stitch. 30. So whenever we do straight stitching with amigurumi after we have done increasing stitches to create the dome, the straight stitching helps it just go up. So we've got to create kind of the wall of it because you're not increasing it wider anymore, you're just building up. And that's what that straight single crochet stitching does. So that was our round 6. We want to double check, make sure we have 30 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30 on the stitch marker. Ooh, almost pulled the loop out. So on to round 7, where we are going to do 3 single crochet and then 1 decrease. So that's a new stitch for this project. We're not going to increase. We are going to do 3 single crochets and then a decrease. So let's do our single crochets first. First single crochet, insert the stitch marker, stitch 1, 2, and 3. And now for our decrease, we're not going to go through both of our loops like we have been. We're not going through the whole V. We are just going through that first loop. So that's called the front loop. And when we do decreasing, or this type of decreasing, which is called an invisible decrease, we just go through that first loop instead of both like we usually would. So just the first one, not both of them. So we've got our next stitch here. We're going to just go through, and then it can be a little tricky. That first loop. You can see first loop, and then the back loop behind it. And then for the decrease, we need 2 front loops. So there's the first front loop. We want to grab that next one. So that we've got 3 loops on our hook. So that original loop and then the 2 front loops. We're going to yarn over and just kind of treat it like a normal stitch now, where we yarn over, pull through the first loops. So we just have 2 left on here now, that original loop and a new loop. Yarn over and pull through again. And that is the decrease stitch. Now we're going to move on to the next stitch for our 3 single crochets. And then it can be a little tricky that first time to see where that next stitch is after a decrease. So if you kind of pull it up, you see that these are all attached here. It's that next one over. So this one here is our next stitch to go to. So first single crochet. Second single crochet. And third single crochet. And then we're going to do another decrease. So we're going to go through the front loops of our next 2 stitches. Just the front loop. And then just the front loop of the next stitch. So we've got 1, 2, 3 on our hook. Pull through those first 2 stitches and pull through the next 2 stitches. And we need our 3 single crochets, which will go out of this loop here. So 1, 2, 3 single crochets, and then our decrease, front loop, pull through again, 3 single crochets, one, 2, 3, and a decrease, front loop, and front loop, pull through the first 2, pull through the next 2, 3 single crochets, redo that single crochet, one, 2, decrease, front loop, next front loop, through, 3 single crochets, three, and then a decrease with our last 2 stitches. Oop. Just the front loop. And front loop again. Pull through. And pull through again. So that was row 7. And at the end of row 7, since we did decreases, we should have gone down from 30 stitches to 24. So we'll double check